Blue Clipper, built in 1990, is a steel-hulled 144-foot, 140 gross ton triple-masted schooner which offers paid passages along an annual Atlantic Circle voyage. Shorter vacation-type cruises are a focus during the winter in the Caribbean, the spring in the Mediterranean, and during the summer in the Hebrides. Longer passage-type cruises from the Caribbean to Portugal in the late winter and from Portugal back to the Caribbean in late autumn are also offered. Here is a behind-the-scenes look at Blue Clipper during a recent vacation-type leg touring the Grenadine Islands from St. Lucia. We'll take a look at life aboard Blue Clipper, below decks, above decks, sailing operations, the crew, and some challenges faced on this particular voyage. Let's start with a boat tour below decks. A normal paid passage will give a person one of two berths available in a stateroom. The top bunk is narrower but sports a porthole, while the bottom bunk has a bit more space. The staterooms have air conditioning, and the generators on the ship were run almost 24 hours a day. There is one electrical power connection with EC standard plug available. Each stateroom has a dedicated toilet, sink, and shower. The ship has a very large capacity water maker, and with the generators continually running, there was no concern about hot water or taking a normal shower. The toilet used fresh water and required turning on valves to fill the bowl and hand pumping to flush. It was okay to flush toilet paper on this vessel. Each stateroom had a closet with drawers. A storage box could be used as a chair for a small desk. Bath towels were provided, and a towel bar was available to dry after use. Bedding was replaced midway through a 7-day voyage. There was a washing machine and Wi-Fi available for ship's needs, but not for passengers. Each berth was also provided with immersion suits, ocean standard life preservers, and day-use inflatable life preservers for safety. The engine room was well organized and had decent space and tools for the engineer to work, though I was told that the space gets hot and loud during normal operations. Passengers were generally assigned to one of 6 dedicated staterooms. The crew were berthed primarily in the forepeak, while there were assigned quarters for the captain and ship's officers below the aft decks. There was one additional space which was labeled an ensuite family cabin with a dedicated bathroom that could sleep up to 6. I believe some of the ship's crew used this overflow space in addition to the forward berths. The ship's cook had a dedicated galley which was separate from the above-deck saloon where guests and crew ate their meals. Once prepared, the meals were platooned to an open window of the saloon where dedicated crew would then serve the guests. Meals were served daily at approximately 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. The saloon had a dedicated kettle and 2 large stainless steel French presses for coffee in the morning. The saloon also made available a toaster, a host of games, a television screen, alcohol was available for purchase, and many other supplies for guests. The crew were comprised for the most part of young English, Scottish, or Irish sailors. I think the oldest crew member was 31, who was not the ship's captain. Yet all were extremely professional, charismatic, collaborative, and conscientious. They all seemed happy with their situation on the ship, and all seemed to feel very valued. Their contracts of employment provided a higher level of flexibility than might be found on other ships. The captain invited collaboration, but commanded respect, and his judgment was adhered to more out of admiration than out of expectation. When problems required creative solutions, crew member input was invited and considered, which inspired great loyalty from this young crew. The embarkation process involved one dinghy dedicated to baggage and the second dinghy dedicated for passenger shuttling. The crew brought the luggage aboard and staged it down in front of the staterooms, which were assigned to the passengers. The first mate issued the welcome and orientation, walking us through safety procedures, ship protocols, and showing us to our stateroom assignments. All guests donned their life vests and demonstrated the ability to buckle and adjust the straps. The first mate then spent time with each stateroom to ensure the passengers were oriented into how to use the head, the HVAC, and electrical systems. After a short acclimatization period, all guests were summoned to the saloon where the captain introduced us to the crew and provided a brief on the itinerary of this particular voyage. The three masts of the schooner held the mizzen, main, and schooner gaff-rigged sails. The rigging for these three sails were set up so that the throat halyards were controlled from the starboard side, whilst the peak halyards were controlled from the port side. Passengers or voyaging crew were often assigned to control lines such as the port and starboard preventers or the vang, which were all attached to the peak to control lateral and vertical movement, in addition to what the normal halyard provides. The halyards were easy to spot due to their generally larger circumference relative to other lines they rested beside. The preventers were always black lines, and the vang was always found amidships. The main and schooner sails were reefed while at anchor ahead of some anticipated heavier winds during this voyage. In those conditions, the mizzen was not raised. The staysail was self-tacking on a boom and was often the first forward sail raised. It was generally straightforward to manage. The inner jib was also often put to use, but we did not fly the outer jib during this particular voyage. Bringing down the inner jib required someone pulling on the downhaul in addition to easing the appropriate halyard, and a couple of crew members would go out onto the bowsprit to gather in the sail. Over the course of a week, passengers would be invited to help with either sweating or tailing halyards, sheets, maintaining control lines, gathering sails on the bowsprit, or helming the vessel under sail. Upon the completion of a sail, we would motor to the preferred anchoring spot, and crew members would be at the windlass ready to drop the requested amount of chain. Communications were maintained with walkie-talkies. Once anchored, if there was not a predetermined excursion immediately planned, passengers were often solicited as to their preferences to kayak, swim, snorkel, paddleboard, go ashore, or stay aboard the ship. Once passengers were acclimated to any item such as a kayak or a harness to climb the bowsprit, passengers were welcome to use such gear as they wished, with the understanding that they would first let a crew member know. Anchor watch was conducted in 2-hour shifts throughout the nighttime hours. Our voyage in particular had some activity during these periods. In the lee of Mayrow Island, a link in the anchor chain failed, and the anchor watch had to notify the captain that the ship was suddenly adrift. The ship was quickly put under power and brought back to the original location, where the second anchor was deployed. At daybreak, a dinghy was launched with the first mate and engineer set out to recover the anchor. They first attempted to find the anchor, dragging a grappling hook along the bottom. After a few efforts, the engineer jumped into the water with some goggles and found that he could see to the bottom fairly well. He then continued the effort by snorkeling along the surface until he spotted what might be the anchor or associated chain. He eventually discovered the anchor and swam a line 25 feet down and under the anchor chain, bringing back up to the surface the working end of that line. The first mate then tied a bowline knot on one end of that line and brought the other end through the loop, and then pulled the working end all the way through so that the bowline loop was pulled taut onto the anchor chain. This then was repeated 2 more times. A large diameter line was again brought down, this time near the broken end of the anchor chain, and brought back up. Again, a bowline was worked down so that the chain was lassoed. Finally, a smaller diameter line was brought down to the same point, but this line was fed through a link in the anchor chain and brought back up to the surface. Again, this line was lassoed with a bowline and worked down to the chain. These two lines were then brought up to the ship through a hawser and led along the deck to an electric capstan. The line was then slowly hauled up until the broken end of the chain was slightly above the ocean surface. A chainless link was then affixed to the chain, hoisted up to the broken length still on the ship. Once in place, the lines which had been used to pull up the chain were loosened, untied from the anchor chain, and then the chain was brought up normally via the windlass. This entire operation was conducted with minimal chaos and maximal team effort. I can't stress enough how, despite the young average age aboard, this crew conducted themselves as if they held the maturity of twice their ages when it mattered. On the last afternoon prior to disembarkation, we were trained and allowed to climb the masts. We later had a last dinner together outside on the bow. The next day we were to meet individually with the captain to settle our respective bar bills, provide a tip for the crew, and recover our passports, which had already been cleared back into St. Lucia on the previous day. From start to finish, I was impressed with the operations maintained by Maybe Sailing and the crew of Blue Clipper, and would encourage others who might otherwise not have the means to sail in these intriguing locations to take advantage of such an opportunity.